I'm going to take one simple idea and turn it into a full 6-minute progressive rock tune. Pack your lunch and grab your backpack. Join me at the Prog School. When I think of progressive music, the first thing that pops into my head is 15-minute songs with multiple styles, virtuosic solos, tempo changes, and a bunch of ideas thrown together. And I love all these things, but often a song with too many ideas can feel overlong, lack cohesion and flow, and feel a little self-indulgent. Since today's lesson features the first full tune I've written for the Prog School, I thought it would be cool to take the opposite approach. So we're going to look at how I took one idea and then expanded it into a full song. Learning how to develop your musical ideas or motifs is one of the most important compositional skills that you can have, and it's something I'm always trying to do, especially with longer, more complex music. Alright, let's get into the tune. First I'll show you the basic motifs that I'm working with, and then I'll go through the whole tune and show you how I'm expanding those throughout. Here's the section I'm extracting all these ideas from. I'm going to break this section down into 3 components: rhythm, harmony, and melody. By taking these ideas down to their core, I can create simple motifs that are easy to modify and expand throughout the tune. First up is the rhythm. The core rhythmic motif is this 2-measure phrase. Most of this tune is in 4/4, which is not the proggiest of time signatures. I think there's this idea in prog that you have to write in odd meters, right? But there's so much you can do in 4/4 to make it more interesting. And throughout this tune, we'll see a lot of syncopation, and I'll be accenting offbeats just to kind of bring some interesting color into a more common time signature. I'm going to use this rhythmic motif multiple ways throughout the tune. I'll take it as a full 2-measure phrase, and I'm also going to use each measure separately. And in particular, I'm going to use the second measure a lot. The rhythm in the second measure is a variation on what I've heard called the pop clave rhythm. The pop clave is grouped as 3-3-3-3-4. In this tune, it's done as 16th notes. You're probably familiar with this rhythm as it's used in dozens of pop and rock tunes. Rosanna by Toto, Aerials by System of a Down, and even Panic Attack by Dream Theater. What I'm doing with this rhythm here is I'm just shifting it over 1/8 note. So instead of starting it on the downbeat, I'm going to start it on the and of 1. Starting phrases on an offbeat is something I do quite often, and it's a really effective way of bringing some interest to a more straightforward rhythm. In the intro of the tune, the drums play a slightly modified version of our 2-measure rhythmic motif. This drum groove is the first thing you'll hear in the tune. It's the first thing I wrote as well. And what I did was I just broke it down to its core rhythmic accents to kind of get my motif out of it. As this drum groove is, it's a little too complex to be really malleable as a motif throughout the tune, so I needed to kind of break it down to something a little simpler. Now let's talk about the basic harmonic motif I'm using in this tune. The bass guitar and the keyboard pad are providing this in the intro, and the bass is playing a riff in the F-sharp Phrygian mode. The darkness and melancholy of Phrygian works really well for the moody vibe I was trying to create in the intro. Here are the notes of F-sharp Phrygian and the chords that are built off of those. The bass riff is mostly playing off the tonic F-sharp note, while occasionally highlighting the G or the flat 2 to give you that Phrygian sound. The harmonic motif I'm going to draw from here is actually in the keyboard pad, so let's take a look at that. What we have here in the keyboard pad is an F-sharp minor 11 to an E minor 9. Just like I did with the rhythmic motif, I'm going to break this down to something simpler. So we're just going to take F sharp minor to E minor, or the minor 1 chord to the minor 7 chord in F sharp Phrygian. This movement of a minor chord to a minor chord a full step down is going to be our main harmonic motif. The melodic motif for this piece is very simple. It happens in the clean electric guitar and the piano in the intro, and it sounds like this. This is a simple 3-note descending pattern using a syncopated rhythm. The first measure of this in particular is what I'm going to use to build on melodically. Now that we've looked at the basic motifs that I'm going to build on, we're going to go through the whole tune and see some of the ways that I use these. Every single piece of this tune uses at least one of these ideas. Sometimes you'll see all 3, you might just see 1, you might see 2. You'll see as we go along, but the idea is that I'm going to take these motifs and I'm going to expand them as far as I can to create a full complex piece of music that feels very cohesive. Before I get into it, I want to talk about the structure a little bit. I'm roughly following a pop song form, so verse, chorus, bridge, chorus, with a couple of major changes, specifically in the bridge and at the end of the tune. So I'll be referring to these sections as such as I go through the tune. I've already talked about what happens in the intro, but essentially these ideas just stack on top of each other. So you have drums, and then the bass guitar and pad enter, and then the clean guitar and piano enter after that. Once all of these ideas have been introduced and the overall mood of the piece is set, the lead guitar comes in to play our verse melody. The melody in the first verse is a variation of the melodic motif. In fact, it starts exactly the same and then moves into some new material. Rhythmically, it's based on our main rhythmic motif. In particular, check out the last measure of the verse where it catches the modified pop clave. I use this rhythm mostly as a way to transition between sections. Now we move to the first chorus. Here we go away from our Phrygian tonality and move to the key of B minor. B minor and F sharp Phrygian share the same sharps, flats, and chords, as they are both modes of D major. This makes the transition really natural because it's not really a key change, the root has just changed to the note B. You will see this move from a root note of F sharp to B, which is the interval of a fourth, happen throughout the tune. This is a pretty common key center change, similar to the movement of the 1 to 4 chord in the 5th measure of a 12-bar blues. Here are the melody and chords together. We're using a basic minor 1-6-7-5 chord progression. Notice the chords aren't changing on the downbeat of every measure. This relates to our rhythmic motif, where the second measure of the motif begins on the end of 1, so that's where I'm changing the chords in the chorus. You can see this when they are lined up. So I'm using that rhythmic motif to inform where the chords are changing. For the melody, you can see the 3-note motif in measures 1 and 3. One variation here is that I'm moving that figure from starting on beat 1 to starting on beat 3. It's a simple change, but pretty effective. The first chorus is half as long as the choruses that happen later. This is a pretty common writing tool where the full chorus isn't revealed until the second time through. I also bring the dynamics way down here, which is another common thing you'll hear in a first chorus. I'm kind of just teasing the listener with the chorus. I think it's really important in a tune like this that's based off of simple ideas to have as much dynamic contrast as possible. By bringing the first chorus down, the following choruses are going to have a much greater impact. After the first chorus, the intro, verse, and chorus repeat with some slight variations. The intro kicks back in with the introduction of our heavy rhythm guitars. Once again, I'm just kind of teasing the louder sections of the song that are going to come later. So once the second verse hits, those heavy rhythm guitars drop out. The climax of this whole tune is right near the end, so I need to take my time getting to these louder sections. It's this push and pull between loud and soft that's kind of happening throughout. The second verse comes down dynamically from the intro, but it's louder than the first verse. The only major difference between our first verse and second verse is that in the second verse there's a 2-measure transition that leads us into the second chorus. Here's the melody, pad chords, heavy guitars, and drums for this 2-measure transition section. Notice the second measure of our rhythmic motif is used to get to the chorus in the last measure here. Harmonically, we hit a C add 9 chord. This chord is a tritone away from the F-sharp Phrygian riff that precedes it. Using a chord that's a tritone away from the previous chord is a pretty common movement in metal and heavier music. You could also think of this chord, the C chord, as being the flat 2 chord in B minor, which is what the chorus is in. The flat 2 chord in a minor key is also called the Neapolitan chord, and you'll hear this used quite often. It's something I do all the time. From C add 9, we move a step down to B flat add 9, and this mirrors our harmonic motif, but this time with major chords instead of minor chords. Once again, a simple variation that works really well. Then we move to an F sharp / A sharp chord. This shares the same root note as the B flat chord, and also functions as the dominant or 5 chord in B minor. Now we hit our second chorus. Here we have the lead guitar playing the melody, we have heavy rhythm guitars, bass, and drums doing a variation of our rhythmic motif, and some more keyboards to fill in the sound. The tune is going to come way down dynamically after this, so I wanted to make sure that this part was really loud so that contrast was more effective. As I mentioned earlier, this chorus is twice as long as the first chorus. In the second half, we have a slightly modified chord progression and melody. The B minor and E minor are the same as the first half, and then it moves to an A minor 7 with a C in the bass. Once again, that's C invoking the flat 2 sound we saw before the second chorus, and also from the Phrygian sound of the verses. Then it moves to C minor major 7. I love using minor major 7 chords, and in this case it works really well because the C minor major 7 contains the note B, and we are in the key of B minor for the chorus. This move from A minor 7 / C to C minor major 7 also calls back to the chords right before the second chorus, where we move between two seemingly unrelated chords by keeping the same root note. This is a really nice way to move between non-diatonic chords. To finish the chorus, we hit a G power chord in the guitars, while the keyboards play an E minor on top, and that moves us back to F sharp for the end of the chorus. Once again, using this idea of moving between two minor chords that are a step apart, in this case E minor to F sharp minor. Now we move into the bridge. This is where the structure of the tune moves away from our pop song form a bit. We start by hitting this big F sharp 5 power chord, so just the root and the fifth, F sharp and C sharp. And while that's holding, a clean guitar comes in playing a simple octave ostinato on the note F sharp. By using an F sharp 5 here instead of an F sharp minor, like earlier in the tune, I'm leaving it ambiguous as to whether this is in F sharp minor or F sharp major because this chord has no third. That way, when the clean guitar melody comes in the bridge with an F sharp major chord, it doesn't feel out of place. This is called moving to a parallel key, which means that the two keys share the same root note, in this case F sharp minor and F sharp major. This is a really nice key change if you want to create a color shift. The melodic clean guitar comes in here with what will be our second and ultimately the climactic melodic theme of the tune. During the bridge, this is all taking place over an F sharp pedal note in the lower guitar. Once again, using this idea of having chords shift on top of the same root note. I'm also borrowing chords from F sharp minor here. So we have F sharp major, C sharp minor, B minor 6, and then back to F sharp major. Notice the C sharp minor to B minor change, once again using our harmonic motif. This idea is called modal mixture, and in a future prog school lesson I'm going to go into this in more depth. But what I'm doing here is I'm taking chords from F sharp major and combining them with chords from F sharp minor. I'm pretty careful when I move to a major key in a prog song like this to stay away from traditional major chord progressions because I think they're too uplifting and happy for prog. You can definitely use major keys really well in this kind of music, but by borrowing a few chords from the parallel minor key, I'm able to keep this sounding triumphant without it sounding cheesy. This whole bridge phrase is 7 measures long. Using an odd phrase length like 7 bars is a really nice way to create some variety, especially if we're dealing with common time signatures. Notice here that the melody on the second bar is hitting on the and of 1, which is catching part of our rhythmic motif. This bridge phrase then repeats again with an added piano figure. This piano part first echoes the melody with a counter melody that uses our 3-note melodic motif before moving to play the melody with the guitar. Using our melodic motif as a counter melody allows for a new melody to take center stage while keeping this familiar thread to the other parts of the tune. Then we have a swelling piano pad and guitar figure that builds to the next section. This figure uses the modified pop clave rhythm. This leads into what I'm going to call the interlude. Here we have 2 sections going back and forth, the first being a spot with super loud hits based on our rhythmic motif, and the second being a quiet, moody section over the F-sharp pedal tone. These hits are the purest form of the rhythmic motif we will see in the tune. The rhythm guitars and bass play the exact rhythmic motif, while the drums add a few extra lead-in notes with the kick. From our previous F-sharp pedal tone section, we're going to move to B minor to start this proggy section. And I'm going to do that by using an A-sharp diminished 7th chord, which functions as the dominant chord to B minor. This proggy section starts out with a sort of bluesy riff in the electric piano and organ. It goes between 1 measure of B minor and 1 measure of A minor 6, once again bringing back the harmonic motif. This riff is pentatonic in nature, going between B minor pentatonic and A minor pentatonic with kind of a Dorian sound on the A minor. The Phrygian feeling of these 2 chords back to back keep this from feeling too bluesy. It kind of catches the vibe without straying too far from the overall mood of the rest of the piece. We also have our first introduction of an odd meter here. On the 4th measure of this riff, I cut off an 8th note to make it a 7/8 measure. On measure 8, we use the modified pop clave rhythm to bring in the drums and heavy rhythm guitars, and then the riff comes in full force. Once this riff plays through once, I bring back the exact original melodic motif from the intro to play over top of this bluesy riff. What's cool about this is that these notes function differently over this riff than they do over the F-sharp Phrygian groove from the intro. For example, the first 3 notes are the 5th, 4th, and root over the F-sharp Phrygian riff, and they're the 9th, root, and 5th over the B minor here in the bluesy riff. It's kind of a reharmonization of this melody to put it over this different riff. It was one of those things that I just tried and it happened to work. Sometimes it might require a modification to make an idea work in 2 places, but here it worked perfectly. After this, I move to the only section that's completely in an odd meter. Here I use the 7/8 rhythm that's grouped 3-2-2. This was number 2 in my Odd Meters You Need to Know video, and you can check that out here. This part shifts back down to F-sharp Phrygian, and once again uses the harmonic motif in the pad chords. Most of this tune has been a little more sparse, but here we have the first instance of straight 16th notes. I've talked a lot about dynamic contrast in this lesson, but the contrast of dense sections and sparse sections is a really useful tool as well. From here, the bluesy riff and the 7/8 section repeat. The 7/8 section goes twice as long the second time, and on the second half of it, it modulates up to B, once again doing this F-sharp to B transition. Now we move from the proggy section back to the main intro riff. Here we have a few extra keyboards playing the melodic motif, and I actually let the lead guitar play the first couple notes completely by itself. This gives a brief respite before the riff comes back in and kicks you in the face. From here we go straight to the last chorus. Our last chorus is exactly the same as the second chorus, with just a few lead guitar fills added in. I've restrained from noodling too much in this tune so far, but since we've kind of reached the end and we're getting towards the climax, I wanted to bring up the intensity and bring in some of those guitar fills. Once again, it's all about contrast and dynamics. Finally, we get to the climax of the tune. Here we bring back the bridge melody, but this time we move to the relative major key instead of the parallel major key. The chorus is in B minor, and we're moving here to the key of D. And these two keys share all the same notes in common, which makes it a relative key change. This key change is a little more natural and works really well for the triumphant feeling I was going for. One other difference here is that I'm not pedaling the bass notes like it was in the bridge. Here the root note changes with the chords, and the chords are D, A minor, G minor 6, then back to D. Other than that, this is the same as the bridge, just orchestrated differently. The melody is the same, the counter melody is the same, and I bring back more of the rhythmic motif. Here are all the parts laid out. We have lead guitar, electric piano, and organ on the melody. Our second lead guitar and piano on the counter melody. The pad is playing big chords, and the rhythm guitars, bass, and drums are playing a modified version of our rhythmic motif. This is where everything comes full circle and lets loose. Huge guitar runs, big drums, everything as loud as possible. Then we use the modified pop clave rhythm in the last measure to transition us back to the intro riff, which brings everything down for a few bars before the tune ends. So there's the full breakdown of the tune. My hope is that I didn't come across as like, look how clever I am with all my little writing tricks. My main goal here is to provide you with some of the ideas that I've used to help me write better music. I think writing music, specifically progressive music, can seem so abstract and like there's so many different things and ideas that you can do and you can take it anywhere you want, which is really cool. But it's nice to have some tangible ways to be able to put these ideas together to make a good song. This is why I wanted the first full song that I wrote for this channel to be about expanding ideas and motifs. This is a foundational compositional technique that I'm going to use through all the music that I write on this channel, especially when we get into the more complex music later on. It's really important that when you're writing, your songs don't become just a collection of random riffs and ideas. They need to connect and there needs to be a flow. That's what's going to make your music really stand out. I'm going to let this song play in its entirety at the end of the video. If you'd like, you can follow the description below to pick this up on my Bandcamp. I'll post the full video of just the song here on YouTube as well, and it will be available on streaming services, but Bandcamp is the best way to support me directly so I can keep making more of these videos. I have more Prog School lessons coming soon, each one with a full song written specifically for that video. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, hit the bell notifications, and give it a share. Until next time, stay proggy.